What is going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. And of course, as always, I'm your humble host, Niko House. Today, we are going to discuss this leaked audio by Hunter Biden that is literally just him snitching on himself. I don't really understand it, but we're going to talk about it anyway. Thanks for tuning in. So like I said, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk about this leaked Hunter Biden audio. And to help break this down, I got Franco from Franc Analysis. What's going on, Franco? How you doing?
What's up, Niko? Thank you so much for having me on, man. Never thought I would be on when I would tune into your channel like 2 years ago when I found you. And I just started my channel this year. And the goal is to inspire more people to start their channels and to see how much they can grow, because they can do a much better job. As long as they're objective, as long as they know where to get their information from, they can do a much better job than mainstream media and a lot of these other, big progressive channels.
Yeah, the mainstream media definitely does not set a high bar. And I do think that this Hunter Biden story is a perfect example of that. So there was leaked audio yesterday that basically is just Hunter Biden admitting everything that he's been accused of. And I listened very closely to the audio. I didn't hear a Russian accent. I didn't hear Putin saying anything in the background. So I don't think he was under any, forced coercion or anything like that. So what we're going to do really quick is check out this audio, and then I want to get your take on it.
I get calls from my father to tell me that the New York Times is calling, but my old partner Eric, who literally has done me harm for I don't know how long, is the one taking the calls because my father will not stop sending the calls to Eric. I have another New York Times reporter calling about my representation of literally, Dr. Patrick Ko, the fucking spy chief of China, who started the company that my partner, who was worth $323 billion, founded. It is now missing. The richest man in the world is missing, who was my partner. He was missing since I last saw him in his $58 million apartment and signed a $4 billion deal to build the fucking largest fucking LNG port in the world. And I am receiving calls from the Southern District of New York, from the U.S. Attorney himself. My best friend in business, Devin, has named me as a witness without telling me in a criminal case, and my father without telling me.
So I think that the first thing we should do is address the elephant in the room. At about 1 minute and 15 seconds, did this fool just do a line in the middle of his voice memo, bro?
A lie?
A line, not a lie, a line. Like a
line?
He literally goes...
There's a lot going on in the background there. There was a lot going on in the background. And like you said, there was no Russian accent. It was clearly Hunter Biden. He even sounds a little bit like Joe Biden.
Yeah.
So there's no way the mainstream media can spin it. So what do they do now? They ignore it. They're not even reporting on it.
Yeah, there is no way to spin this. And I think that there's a few things that get confirmed by this, I guess what you would call a testimony, if anything. There was, once again, no forced coercion here. This is him speaking at his own free will in what appears to be a voice memo, because there are people who just become very successful that they leave voice memos for themselves because they have so much going on that they want to be able to keep up with what they're doing. And when he also sounded a little frustrated about what was happening, right?
Yeah.
Like kind of like everything was being put on his shoulders. And when you are like, yeah, my business partner is Peter Ho, former Chinese spy. My partner's missing, and
So you're so specific.
Very specific. So specific that you knew he was expecting no one to hear this stuff, right? Because there's no way you would because the whole thing, like what Tony Babaluski, I think his name, he said, like, the one thing you don't do is talk about Joe Biden's name regarding any of this stuff unless you're in person. And even that, don't try to bring him up there. And so clearly he didn't think anyone was going to hear this, which is what makes his testimony or his voice memo all the more damaging. And I also think that the quid pro quo nature of a lot of this stuff with both Ukraine and China is just kind of it's undeniable now. What do you think?
Yeah, it is undeniable now. And now Trump is using it to his advantage. And now, like you said, he has it on his website now.
Yeah, it's literally if you type in Google Hunter Biden anybody, Trump campaign website comes up, and the first thing that it says in the meta title says leaked Hunter Biden audio. First thing on Trump's campaign website.
Yeah. So how is it that when the New York Post article was getting when it first came out, that was getting censored, but Trump's taxes wasn't getting censored because I don't know why. It seems like big tech is in line more with the Democrats, and then conveniently that Borat movie came out in which it was trying to make Republicans look bad. So the talent agencies want Biden to be president.
Well, you gotta remember, Biden is part of CAA.
Yeah, and so is Sacha Baron Cohen, apparently. Like, if you look it up. Yeah. So, and our intelligence, we know that they play a part in Hollywood. So maybe they want Biden to be president because he's more competent than Trump. And hey, I'm saying this, I don't want Trump as president. I don't want Biden as president either. But maybe they know that they can carry out more acts of war. They can probably force people pass all these laws to manufacture people's consent to have obligatory vaccines under a Joe Biden presidency more so than a Trump presidency.
That's true. That's very true. I forgot about that aspect of it. And it's funny because Kamala was all of a sudden critical of the idea of a vaccine. That it was just like, wow. I mean, you would have told me a lot of stuff that's happened in 2020 would come into fruition. If you would have told me that stuff 2-3 years ago, I'm like, you're crazy. But if you would tell me that Kamala Harris and the Democrats would turn into anti-vaxxers for 2020's election, I'd be like, you're out of your damn mind. They just attacked Jill Stein for saying we should always continue to do medical research on any type of medicine, and that we should, like, science is the important part of science is constantly, doing your checks and balances there. And she was like, they were like, oh man, you're an anti-vaxxer. She's like, I'm an MD. What are you talking about? like she's a Harvard MD.
It's a partisan issue though. Like, it's like, oh, under a Trump presidency, I wouldn't trust it. What would be different about it? The WHO is going to be the same. The CDC is going to be the same.
Pfizer is still developing the vaccine. Regardless, Pfizer paid off Biden and Kamala just like they paid off Trump, and if they didn't pay off them, they did pay off just about everybody in Congress. They're the second largest lobbying donors to, they're the second largest big pharma donors in the legislature. Mm-hmm. And they got their money back tenfold, right? I think they spent about $200 million total over the last 10 to 15 years, and they got a $500 million contract and then some, and probably a bunch of other grants too. So when you consider all of that, it's kind of ridiculous to pretend as if Pfizer and the people who are in charge of that vaccine are going to all of a sudden be replaced if Kamala or Joe Biden win. That's ludicrous. It's not going to happen. It's like Fauci's going to still be there. Like, he's been there for 5 years.
Like, he's been there, yeah, since the Reagan administration.
Yeah, Fauci's damn near older than Reagan, it seemed like. Like, come on, bro. It doesn't make any sense. But like, this is the consistent pattern that we've seen, right? The calls for censorship, as if you were just talking about, like, this is one of the biggest. This reminds me of the Epstein story, in the sense that I remember in 2016 when the Epstein story broke and it implicated in some way both Trump and Bill Clinton. That was like the breaking story. I remember laying in bed reading this, like, oh my God, this could tank both their campaigns. What the hell?
Yeah.
And then, bro, when I tell you the story was like erased from the internet for the rest of the election, even though he ended up going to jail over it. Epstein did. And of course, Bill Clinton was absolutely implicated in it. And so, but it disappeared because it was too inconvenient for the Democratic candidate. And it means that somebody had the ability to make a call to every single mainstream media editor and was like, do not run this story, period. And that's what I believe we're seeing happening here when it comes to not only the stories that are running the mainstream media, but the way big tech is handling the stories that should be breaking news all over the country.
Yeah, and speaking of censorship, which channels are being censored first? the ones that are being taken down. It's channels like The Last American Vagabond, channels that are talking about Operation Warp Speed, and who are challenging the mainstream media narratives about the pandemic. Like, this is what I see from a lot of these bigger channels, not yours, but other channels like even Kyle, Mike Figueredo. They fall for a lot of mainstream narratives about how hydroxychloroquine is dangerous, how masks are supposed to
silly.
protect us and reduce the spread of the virus, which there's no scientific studies that show that. There are certain masks that can prevent, spit particles by coming out, but there is no direct cause and effect study that show that masks are going to reduce the spread of the virus. And there's even
the studies are way too inconsistent for any conclusive, like, to say that they absolutely would stop the spread of the virus is ludicrous, because like unless every store clerk in every situation want to ask to check what type of mask I have, because every mask that I've ever had, to be frank, except for maybe one, they all say this isn't going to protect you from anything. Just letting y'all know.
Yeah.
It's basically a fashion statement.
I'm not even an anti-masker, but there are certain types of masks that will not protect you and will even make things worse. For example, there's like cloth masks can retain more germs than any other kind of mask.
Yeah.
Even if you wash them, that messes up the material, and then it can retain more germs. And even certain types of medical masks, there's studies that show that over a few hours after during surgery, they accumulate more germs in the hospital room itself.
Yeah. Which makes
but
sense.
They're also challenged, like The Last American Vagabond, Whitney Webb. They're also challenging the narratives about how we need a vaccine and how the vaccine is going to save us all.
Yeah, we don't have what's crazy about that is I don't go looking for solutions where there are already solutions available. When someone tells me I need a solution, I'm like, so what about interferon, or what about hydroxychloroquine and zinc?
Yeah.
They're like, well, no, but a vaccine would be. I'm like, no, double back. Why are we even entertaining a vaccine instead of exploring the options that are already available if the most important thing is saving lives?
Mm-hmm.
And so that type of stuff, and I'm glad that Last American Vagabond, Whitney Webb, and a lot of people have at least been asking the right questions, and because there's this conflation of, if you don't believe in like this false narrative, and it was, by the way, proof, CNN had to issue out a correction about hydroxychloroquine. They got to issue out a correction. Harvard MD called out the Lancet over in Europe because they were putting out a story that about basically saying that hydroxychloroquine and zinc was not only not working, but it was damn near deadly for you to take it. And when they try to go back, and when other researchers try to go back and recreate that study, it turned out that they wouldn't give anyone the criteria that they use so they can replicate the study. Harvard MD called them out, and they had to completely remove the story. And if you figure out where that research came from, it's almost completely funded by Bill Gates. And then the woman who was in charge of it had no experiences in the medical field whatsoever. So like, these are the things that like I feel like we should be talking about more as leftists, because the left used to be about autonomy of our body, challenging the establishment, especially when it comes to the things we put in our body. I feel like that's just common sense. We talk about how Monsanto poisons us, right? Mm-hmm. Which, because they do. We talk about how corrupt the FDA is. You talk about how corrupt Big Pharma is, and then all those people are still here. They're still influencing the politics, but now because like the fear mongers is set in, so nobody wants to use logic. Like now all of a sudden it's like, no, you have to virtue signal instead of actually breaking down the nuance. Say like, okay, we're right here, here, and here. This is where we're getting a little bit fishy, so we should explore this more to make sure everything lines up. Just because you say hydroxychloroquine and zinc works, because people attack you for saying like,
they nitpick studies that show when it doesn't work, which is when you take it too late, or when you use too little or too much,
or if you had a heart problem, which by the way, before COVID, you wouldn't be able to use hydroxychloroquine anyway if you had a heart problem, at least without taking it with a combination. There's another drug that they combine it with if you have a heart problem, and even that is more helpful than not taking it at all. I want to double back really quick to this Hunter Biden situation. Mm-hmm. Do you think that this is going to have any outcome on or any effect on the outcome of the election? Because the audio's gone viral. It's everywhere.
It's hard to say because a lot of people already voted early, but maybe these are the people that already had their minds made up anyway, and it wasn't going to change. But I don't know how many undecided voters there are, but we saw how when Hillary Clinton lost, she lost because she didn't campaign in the states that were swing states that she really needed to campaign in. Maybe some of these people are thinking that their lives are going to go back to how they were under Obama, in which things kept getting progressively worse, and they might bite the bullet and vote Trump again. Who knows? But yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to say, but I'm not really buying how these polls are showing that Biden has this it's going to take the cake with this.
The local polls from cities seem to be differing from the main, like the CNN, MSNBC polls. And that's where I try to get a lot of my polling information from. And even then, once again, it comes down to there is it's weird because now I feel like there's an oversampling that they're like more so than there was before, because more people are at home, more people on lockdown, they're working less hours, they're plugged into their, now everybody got, they can call cell phones, they're not calling house phones anymore. And I think that could actually be a problem, the oversampling of, like, because it's the same amount of people that they're using, but now you're calling people and they're quick to answer the phone because maybe they're just more engaged because of everything that's going on, and they were going to make this, the vote doesn't count more because you're more engaged, right? And also because of how much Trump has been, I mean, just compared to other presidents, really unequivocally demonized even in situations where he shouldn't have been. There is a fear of admitting that you're going to vote for Trump. That's like basic psychology.
To this day, there still is, especially with the pandemic and everything. They're like, oh shit, like I don't want to admit that I want to vote for Trump.
And even if it's for, like, because a lot of times it's generally for selfish reasons, to be honest. A lot of people are voting for him because it's for they have benefited in some way, form, or fashion under a Trump administration, which isn't a bad thing. Like, it's people vote against their self-interest all the time, so I guess it's okay if some middle class people vote for their self-interest. But I do think it should be said, like, don't forget what happened last time. People were literally lying on the polls. Now I think that this will have an effect to a certain degree, but I don't know if it'll have an effect in the sense that it will change the outcome of the election. But I do think it will affect the way that people, if Biden wins, how people will react to all this information. Because I don't think that it's right now that this information is going to be considered the most pertinent. It's really right after, whenever there's going to be a back and forth. I think it's going to come down to Ohio and Pennsylvania. I think that they're going to try, both parties are going to try to cheat their asses off to win both of those states, which is going to lead to Supreme Court appearances. And if it goes to Supreme Court, Trump's going to win. Because Democrats sacrificed 3 justices, basically 3 seats, just so Bernie couldn't win. So I think that it's going to end up going to Supreme Court. I think that Ohio and Pennsylvania will be very contentious, and because of that, I think that it'll go to Trump. But if Biden does win, right, if he needs about 2 more states, if he can't win those, and those are contentious, if he wins like 2 more states that Trump was expecting to win, 2 more swing states, then Biden could win. And then if that happens, I think that you're not going to see Trump leave. But I'm in the very, very rare camp, and I understand, I would contend the shit out of the election too. I mean, if I was either of them, I probably would, just strategically. But if I'm Trump, I have 0 reason to believe the Democrats aren't trying to cheat. 0 reason.
Hey man, it's being objective to want like the best out of democracy, right? We want democracy regardless.
Everybody should challenge the results of the election if they're within a reasonable margin. Everybody. Like, that's my big pet peeve.
Do you think that the results will be settled the night of the election?
Hell no. No. Absolutely.
What do you think they're going to show with the mail-in votes? They're going to show Biden wins, and then without the mail-in votes, it's going to be Trump.
Well, I don't know, because like they tried to say that Hillary was winning last time, right? So I was actually getting my news because I knew that mainstream media here would try to spin, and so I was getting my news from Israel and another place in, I think it was in Iran, like Iran's news place, but they were reporting the results actually earlier, which is weird. So like, I don't know how we're getting them first, but I think it was like because CNN and MSNBC were trying to spin. And so I'm getting these results in Michigan, Pennsylvania, like, and I'm showing Jill Stein because I was at her private watch party. I'm like, oh, Jill, did you see these? And she was like, did I say Trump won Michigan? Oh my God, this is over. I'm like, yeah, and literally nobody knows yet. because nobody was talking. They're like, Hillary still has a chance. She hasn't lost Michigan yet. She hasn't lost Pennsylvania.
Do you think that there not being a Jill Stein this election cycle is going to have an impact that's going to benefit Biden?
No.
Because
Only
it
in the
wasn't
sense
even
that
significant last time, right?
So it does help in this sense. Democrats still votes. Like that was proven through Jill Stein's lawsuits post-election. And Republicans still votes too. And basically the way that it looked like votes were being stolen, if you were a libertarian, the votes were getting stolen and going to Trump or Republicans in that particular race. And then if you were a Green Party, those votes from Jill Stein were getting stolen and going to Hillary, which is why Hillary was like, Trump cheated, Trump cheated, Trump cheated. And then Jill Stein was like, okay, fine, I'll sue him and we'll figure out who cheated. She was like, oh, hold up, never mind, just kidding. JK, please don't sue. Please don't figure out, because then you figure it out. Basically, right, yeah. The rigging is dependent on if the district is red or blue. It's not about who casts the votes. It's about who counts the votes, right? And so I do think that it's actually better for the Democrats to have more Green Party votes to take, right? Because I do believe that Joe Jorgensen is going to do far better than Howie Hawkins is for a plethora.
Yeah, are there even going to be any votes to steal from Howie Hawkins? The guy's like at 0%.
His vote, I guess, his campaign manager's vote, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. And I don't really put a lot of stock into the 0% usually. But Howie Hawkins is an abysmal candidate for the Green Party, and they had Dario Hunter, who would have just, good God. If Dario would have been able to get the platform that he deserved after the campaign that he ran, and in my opinion, he won, but he was cheated by the Green Party's elite. If he would have got that platform, I think the landscape of this entire election would look different, because I think that Howie has just done an abysmal job showing people that there are other options. And that's a whole different discussion. Glory Jones, thank you very much for the super chat. What's up, Glory? Said good to see the two of y'all together on a stream. Yeah, this is what, our second together.
You've been on my show, and now I'm on your show. But yeah, shout out to Glory. She's been on my show too a couple times.
Yeah, make sure, by the way, before we continue, make sure to go follow Franco. It's Franc Analysis with a C. So make sure y'all go follow him and subscribe to him on YouTube and follow him on Twitter. But yeah, I think overall that this leak audio is going to be a problem, but in the same way that Hillary's emails became a problem, it wasn't really that big of a problem while she was running. The problems, it really exposed her, in my opinion, in the Democratic Party in general. Like when they tried to challenge Trump, it was just so much, there was so much information on Hillary that nobody had sympathy for her. Like nobody with the brain.
Yeah, I've heard it from a lot of people too. It's like those emails made me not want to vote for Hillary Clinton, but now those same people are saying that they're still going to vote for Joe Biden. But those same people are still we're questioning the validity of those emails that leaked on Hunter Biden recently. But now here's more validation that those emails are real. But again, there was early voting. Some of those people already voted.
Yeah, like I said, it's like 17 million people or something like that have voted already. Which is a big deal. But once again, I don't know what that means in the context of this election. Usually I'd be able to tell you, like, if it's a higher voter turnout, usually Democrats win. If it's a lower voter turnout, usually Republicans win. But now people aren't going to work, so they can actually show up to early voting. And then but even the early voting lines are long. So is it just people who would be voting normally on the day of the election, they don't have to put it off this time because they're not working and they have more free time? Like, are they finding a time to vote with their free time because maybe their kids are going back to school, or they have their kids all the time and this is the only free time they have? Like, it's a weird situation. It's very hard to kind of just try to, like I said before, I was pretty confident Trump was going to win, but then his rhetorical missteps, and then the way that the mainstream media has kind of painted him with COVID, like everything gets thrown on him and nothing gets thrown on Congress anymore. I feel like, and he hasn't even responded to that well. So that type of stuff, if you're not educated on how things break down, like I know where to hold DeSantis accountable, I know where to hold my mayor accountable, and I know where to hold Trump accountable, I know where to hold Congress accountable. Most people don't break things down like that. So that could work against him. And then just the fact that, let's be real, Democrats cheat. Republicans usually are better at cheating during the general though. But Democrats cheat, and it doesn't take a lot of votes to make a major impact on an electoral college state.
So do you think that this is going to affect the way people view Joe Biden if he does win? More people going to be viewing him as corrupt? Because if we remember with Obama, a lot of people were asleep because there weren't any like cases of corruption with Obama like we see of Joe Biden.
Do I think people are gonna go back to sleep? Yeah. I mean, the thing that you wake up because your alarm clock wakes you up. But if you silence your phone, you can set the alarm clock all you want to. But if you don't hear the alarm clock, you're probably not gonna wake up on time. And that's what I think we're seeing with Joe Biden is the mainstream media is silencing the alarm clock. So if he wins, he's going to do whatever he can to ensure that big tech shuts these stories down. And that's not only about Biden. I think it'll also include Kamala. Everything will be conspiracy theory. Because the real reason they want Biden back, a lot of it has to do with domestic policy, but it's mostly about foreign policy. It's mostly about getting the military-industrial complex, getting what they want, what they've been paying for, on a consistent basis, without a bunch of noise being made about it. And Biden allows that to happen. And he, like I say, he's a more consistent warmonger than Trump is. Trump is not, he's not a consistent warmonger they want.
He easily exposes what the military-industrial complex really wants. Like we secured the oil, we're protecting the oil. Like what he said about Syria, like it's like what we were saying. Biden can carry these things out without much expose as Trump does, and like what Thomas Frank was saying in his book, Listen Liberal, big tech has more ties with the Democrats than they do with the Republicans. So there's going to be way more censorship under a Biden presidency than under a Trump one.
They were working with Obama. That news broke that they were working with Obama during his 2012 campaign. So like with the what was that damn Cambridge Analytica. So it's scary. The amount of the bot farms I've been seeing are on high alert. They're everywhere. I've never seen more bots. I mean, 2016 there were a lot of bots. And maybe because I just have a bigger platform now, maybe because they go after people with big platforms, and it's like, but the reactions it's so obvious when it's a bot at this point.
Like immediately, right? And then you click on them,
it's like, bro, like how? And it's
12 followers, but they like just made their account, or they had their account since like 2009.
Yeah, it's either they had their account in 2009, they had their account in 2016, or they just made their account in 2020. And what's even funnier is the fact that you'll see somebody with an account that was made in September of 2020, and they have 25,000 tweets. Bro, I have 44,000 tweets, and I've had my account since 2015. It's just like basically part of my job to tweet all the time. And I still don't even have. I never even got close to 25,000 my first 4 months.
They put you on Twitter jail.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what people don't get. If you're moving that at that speed, you would be in Twitter jail all the time. Unless you're finding a way to circumvent that system, and that is possible. I'm trying to find that for everybody. There's a documentary on troll farms. Like troll farms and bot farms are like normal, but they aren't usually used for politics until very recently with Hillary Clinton, like with Share Blue, through David Brock. Then New Knowledge did it, where they got caught trying to cheat for Doug Jones by creating bots, then making it look like the bots were from Russia, and then using those bots to attack Doug Jones to make it look like Roy Moore was the one getting benefited by Russia, which is super weird because like most people in like black people in Alabama, those are the people that you were trying to convince. They don't really care about that type of stuff, so I don't know why they thought that was going to be a thing. Like Roy Moore's record is bad enough in and of itself.
And then they were citing New Knowledge to call Tulsi Gabbard a Russian asset, right? Yeah,
exactly. And so when you're factoring in all these different things that like there were some things are similar to 2016, which is why I don't think that Biden's going to win. But also there are so many new circumstances where I saw that Trump had a clear advantage, but because of the way COVID worked out, and like let's be real, right? The Democrats and Republicans to a certain degree, but mostly Democrats, they used COVID to try and win this election. And that's where my biggest grievance is. It's like, wow, y'all really willing to let people die. Y'all really just willing to let people die just to win an election, bro.
When it's convenient, they tell people, oh, you got to go out and vote. Like, even though like we all had to be quarantined, like during the primary. But then other times they're like, oh, what are you doing? Like, you're supposed to be at home. Like, Trump is opening the economy up too soon.
Yeah, that's weird, right? Like, stand nut to butt in this voting line. We're going to reduce the number of locations because that happens a lot. It's happened a lot, right? And especially in swing states where they think that Trump can maybe either be head to head with Biden or even have an advantage. They're encouraging people to go stand in these long lines, and there's not even at least from my experience, there's been no reports on, like, there's a growing fear of candidates encouraging people to go stand in line instead of using mail-in ballots. Like, nobody said anything about that. And yet, if Trump holds a rally, then it's like, oh man, he's trying to kill his supporters. But then Biden tries to hold a rally too, but just the part that doesn't get discussed is, like, nobody goes. Like, that happened in Michigan, where he tried to hold a rally and nobody went. So it never got reported. So they want Biden to be able to do the same things that Trump does in silence, while they make all this noise about how much they care about, how we're conducting ourselves as far as COVID protocol is concerned. But, like, the reality is, like, anybody in the media or in politics trying to tell you how to take care of yourself during this pandemic, they're all full of shit, or they wouldn't be on TV. I don't know how many ways I can say that. Like, it's always been that way, whether it's politics, whether it's marijuana, whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it's kratom. I take kratom on a regular basis because kratom is like the natural version of Adderall, and they try to claim it killed 3 people, so they were trying to Schedule I it for a while, like, just because it was good for you. So, like, if somebody is paid to go on TV and tell you something about, like, what you should do to take care of yourself during this, nobody's going to care about your well-being more than you do. So be accountable for your own actions. Take vitamin C, be healthy, social distance where possible, figure out who your friends or family are interacting with before you're interacting with them. And then, even if you think you might have it, begin to take protocols to make sure that you're not infecting anybody. It's really that simple. Like, it really is. It's not a complicated virus at all, as far as being able to get through it. It has like a 99% survival rate now.
Like 99.5% chance of survival, or even 99.95% chance of survival.
Yeah, it's
but it varies by age. Like, if you're over 60, you have a higher chance of dying from it.
Of course, yeah. And then the average age of death for COVID is 78. And then it turns out the average age for death is 78.
Yo, I was predicting that Trump might have died, and that would have insinuated a lot of chaos. But that didn't end up happening. You think they injected him with some stuff that just
man probably used interferon.
Right.
He's been using stuff like, I do gotta wonder how long he had it.
Other countries are using.
Yeah, but he's actually using what other countries.
Cuba's using interferon and also HCQ, right? They've already combated COVID.
And they beat it. They beat COVID effectively. A lot of African countries have done the same thing. The Trump's quick turnaround is exactly why they didn't want people taking it, or even knowing that it exists. You feel me? Like, because then you can't use that fear to funnel billions into 2 pharmaceutical companies to create a vaccine that you force everybody to take. And then, of course, you still can't. Then you wouldn't be able to use that fear to influence the outcome of an election.
Like, all these people, like, on the left, they say that they're on the side of science, but they're not even looking at the science. They're just listening to authorities who claim to have looked at the science. Why aren't you questioning that? Especially if you're a progressive. These are the people who you're supposed to be questioning, but you're accepting their narratives now. Like, oh man,
and I will also say, like, first of all, I don't believe, like, this moniker of let's believe science. Like, I actually have been growing a little bit more concerned with people saying that, because it is a very authoritarian point of view. It isn't like, it's like, go vote, like, or make sure your vote counts. Make sure you are researching before you just go out and vote. Don't just go vote. Like, if you want to believe science, make sure the science is sound. Make sure you check how the studies were conducted.
Look at the
data. Look at the people funding the study. Look at all of this stuff, and then, like, maybe believe that. And because, like, science isn't I don't know if you want to call it. I won't say it's not a noun, but it isn't an absolute. Science has never been an absolute.
It's never conclusive.
Exactly. And if you want to believe science, then you will have to constantly study things like methodology, the way, like I said, way research is funded, how they're conducting the research, things like that. that is what people should be being told. But then like Kamala and Biden, when they're attacking Trump on climate change and the environment, yeah, we believe scientists.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, but like, I'm in a profession where everybody thinks they're the smartest person in the room, and I know that 95% of them are really not. And so there's no profession that is different than that. By the way, there are a lot of dumb people in science who only got their jobs because they got a degree, went to a research lab, and technically now you're considered a scientist. Doesn't mean anything. Like, I need to know how you came to your conclusions, and that part isn't really being all that much discussed. And it's also not being discussed how Biden and Kamala will say believe science and then ignore science. Like fracking.
Yeah, fracking shows that it causes earthquakes, it can cause health problems, the leaks poison the waters, poison ecosystems, and we are part of the ecosystem. But yeah, it's when it's convenient. They turn it into a partisan issue, and unfortunately a lot of people with platforms fall for those partisan talking points. So what can we do to challenge that, Niko? Like how is it tribal to call out certain neo-progressives is what you call them, and what other people call them? Is it tribal to call them out? Because when I call them out, it's because I care about the movement and I want them to do better, and I don't want people to be misled.
Well, I don't consider it to be tribal by calling them out. I think that the tribal nature of all politics in general, but specifically of the progressive movement, is exactly why people don't call them out, right? And I talk about this often. Like, I know a lot of progressives, like personally. I'm friends with a few of them. Talk on the phone with them, and like, this pattern that I've noticed is that they all reach out to me to tell me they use my story, to tell me how much they enjoy Pasta and Fiorella's information, and then what that generally means for most people, or at least some at the very top of the totem pole of the quote-unquote progressive movement, that usually means they get called on to talk about it because, like, oh wow, I consider them an expert in this subject, I really think other people should hear what they have to say. But in unique cases where you're not you're not very monolithic in your views, like I would say that we're probably both in that category. Well, and if you're talented, by the way, at what you're doing, I would say Glory, Steve Boykin, Whitney Webb, Pasta Fiorella, Robbie Yeager, constantly breaking finance corruption stuff. Too. Like, now you're a threat on top of that, even if I consider you a friend. So there's this basic instinct that comes into play of like, I got to defend what's mine. I can't let my competition get out. And also, I don't want to be attacked for having them on because I know some of my base doesn't like them. So like, and which is why I give Jimmy a lot of credit. Jimmy has on people that he probably doesn't even agree with, that he knows he might get attacked for having on, but he's like, I say I'll always give people the opportunity to hear both sides and then make their decision from there, and he's consistent with that. But there is the reality on the other side of the fence that, like, I hate to say there's some people who don't want their grits to be exposed, but that's basically it. You have the wrong person on who's a little bit more knowledgeable than you from experience, right? Like, there is no reason. I remember when there was a conversation about the Biden crime bill and stop and frisk in New York, and I was like, I'm from New York, and I was in New York during stop and frisk, and I'm black, and I was probably at that point I was one of the only black surrogates outside of Breed Joy. I mean, yeah, Bernie had his camp, but like for any of the other campaigns, I was the only black surrogate, except for maybe Elizabeth Warren, but that was different conversation for a different day. But like, so why wouldn't I get a call about this particular issue when a lot of them already knew that I was from the area, that they know me. So but that in my opinion is like, yeah, but like, if I bring on Niko and he talks about it and breaks all this down, and he might take some of my base, and then if he takes some of my base and I switch up because we know it's coming, and Niko's really kind of not afraid to call me out on the shit, so I don't want to give him any of my base to potentially turn against me later, because I know I'm going to be inconsistent, because I got to keep my bills paid. You know what I'm saying? That Bentley don't pay for itself. And so that's the rabbit hole they go down. So just in order to avoid that, they just freeze people out. So real quick, got a super chat from Firepuff12. Thank you very much. Hey Niko, long time since I caught you live. Great discussion as always. How about the long-lasting perma effects of COVID on your lungs? I have not actually looked into it, but it seems like that's a thing. I saw a lot of the athletes dealing with that during the NBA bubble. Russell Westbrook was dealing with that, and a few others, because once you get COVID, and if, depending on how strong your lungs are, it seems like it's affecting them.
Yeah, that lasts like for the rest of your life. Some of those things stick with you.
Yeah, it could, it could. And I mean, I got asthma, so that's something I deal with anyway. But there are some people who may not be used to dealing with that, like lung issues that could be. But once again, that's just unfortunately part of life. It's part of the reality we live. We have very, very fragile human bodies, and you have to take precautions. But that's not the end of the world for you either. And that's also why it's important for us to have the solutions. Because I do believe that some of the long-lasting effects are because we're not implementing the right solutions, and we're not implementing them at the right time. If you use interferon preventatively, which you could do with no health concerns, it prevents the virus from replicating to any significant degree, which obviously significantly reduces the chance of your lungs being permanently damaged. But if you get the right solution after you get COVID, well, the damage could have already been done by the time you figured out that you had it, but you thought you had a cold or something like that. So I think that's once again, it's important to be preventative, and it's important to talk about the solutions that are already available, and that just doesn't get done enough. But Franco, because you're kind of like an outsider who just started kind of entering into the progressive media world. Like, what's your take? I know you see a lot of the suppression and things like that, and the suppression of independent voices. But do you feel like it's a problem that can make or break the movement, just from a perspective of somebody who just came from the outside? Now you're like in the middle of all of it.
It can, if we kept going at the rate that we were going at like 3 years ago, before it was just TYT. That's like all I knew. And then I found Kyle, and then I found Humanist Report. And then like 2 years later, I found you when I started listening more to politics. And then I found Convo Couch. But I think we need more voices out there so that it spreads nationwide, so that, you have people from South Carolina that have their voice heard by a lot of people from South Carolina, or a lot of people. I'm from Maryland. I can influence a lot of people that are from Maryland. It's like running for the fourth branch of government, like your friend Pasta said when he was on my show. It's like having all these city council members, but we're acting as informers. So one way we can fight the suppression is to just keep having as many people making channels, and finding alternative platforms too, not just YouTube, but going on Odyssey, which you just discovered, or going on Rockfin, because YouTube, like Eric Schmidt, he has an agenda that he wants to suppress all these people that are going to expose like his connections with intelligence, and how do I say this? Like, he wants to keep profiting. So when people are going to be talking about things that are going to challenge his profit motive, he's going to want to silence those voices.
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, I found out that one of the mainstream media websites or channels on YouTube has a $70 CPM. So for those of you who aren't familiar with that, the analytics side, that means every 1,000 views, that particular channel gets $70. Now, a high CPM for any channel is like $8. A really high CPM is about $11 to $12 per 1,000 views, which at one point, that's what a lot of us were getting, because during the election, we were attracting so many unique viewers that were kind of discovering indie media for the first time, that they were coming from all walks of life, and that's how the ads are sold. They're not, people think it's sold based off of the channel. That's not the case. It's actually sold based off of you, in case you didn't know. But they get the ads, so the ads are bought in advance. You're making deals with people like TYT, Wall Street Journal, CNN, MSNBC, saying, we're going to guarantee you don't get monetized. We're going to guarantee you this amount of money if you post this amount on YouTube on a regular basis. So I'll take care of that. Don't worry about it. But so basically, they're saying that I will give you whatever you need, and you got to take that money from somewhere else. And when you have that type of like commitment, you got to take the money from somebody if you're gonna give it to them. And you got like people like Kyle Klinsky and Jimmy Dore, and these people can do 5-6 videos before Wall Street Journal puts out one and get. Whoop, whoop. There you go. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about Wall Street Journal's name, but you damn sure know Jimmy Dore's name. You feel me? And I think that's what it comes down to. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up really quick. Tell everybody where they can find you at.
You can find me on Twitter at B43Franco, and you can also find me on YouTube at Frank Analysis. I'm also a part of another YouTube channel called HMO Podcast, in which my co-hosts cover pop culture and sports. Their names are Pedro and Brooks. They do great coverage. The goal is to garner more apolitical people and find my videos, because I also cover politics there, so that we can have a bigger progressive movement to take down the establishment.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you coming on the show, man. As always, it's a great time talking to you. For everybody
Appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you.
Of course, of course. For everybody else, make sure you hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. But always remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.